Hi, welcome to Harmony with Su-Lynn. In this two-part paperless animation tutorial, I'll show you how to build a walk cycle on the spot, step by step. You'll learn how to construct and animate a bipedal walk cycle that loops using traditional drawn animation techniques. And just as a heads up, this tutorial gets very technical, so feel free to pause it when you need. So let's start. For this tutorial, you'll need some basic knowledge of the principles of animation. For example, the bouncing ball is the first technique every animator should learn. I'd recommend reading The Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. The walk cycle is essentially the benchmark model of movement that is relevant to other depictions of physical activity in animation. It will be one of the hardest actions you'll animate. Any small inconsistency is seen over and over again in a walk cycle on the spot. Usually, animators will avoid having to animate a walk cycle and cheat the shot, but once you've understood how to construct a walk cycle, you can keep practicing and build on it. When I'm teaching this, I find the best way to really understand how to get your character to walk is to first act out the action yourself in a mirror and get a feel of the movement. Identify the main positions that your body, arms, and legs will make while you walk, and make rough sketches for the key poses. Regular life drawing can really improve your drawing agility. We'll start with a simple walk on 12s, which refers to the timing for a normal walk. Working on 1s, that's 24 frames per second, it is equivalent to 2 steps per second. In comparison, a walk on 8s is a fast, cartoony walk, that's 3 steps per second. A walk on 16s is a slower walk, at 2/3 of a second per step. Animating a walk requires producing two extremes or key positions and in-betweening them in a logical way. Here are the two contact positions, and the aim is for the back foot to move 1 step forward. They are contact poses as the feet are in contact with the ground. To make the foot move forward, we start with just 3 drawings. These are the two contact positions and a passing position. The midway position between 2 key poses is normally known as the breakdown position, but in walks it's called the passing position. Planning keyframes is known as pose-to-pose animation. We'll use this method, but often animators will use a combination of pose-to-pose and straight-ahead animation. When animating a walk for the first time, it can get confusing. It is advisable to animate one thing at a time. Start by animating just the legs and body, which is the heart of the movement. When you're happy that the movement is correct, you can add arms and head accents. Let's draw in the 2 contact positions. This is the rough animation. Don't worry about cleanup yet. Enable onion skin. It's a walk on 12s, so these will be on keyframes 1 and 13. And because it is a walk on the spot, they will occupy the same position, with the difference that the front and back legs will swap positions in the first and second contact positions. You can fill empty cells, then create empty drawing at frame 13, and draw in the second contact position. Use shortcuts F and G to move between the keyframes. The contact position is the only point when the character is in balance, as the heel of the front foot touches the ground. The body weight is spaced evenly between 2 feet, and this gives us our stride length. A tip is to use guides for the head height and the ground to maintain consistency. Next, put in the passing position on frame 7. This is keyframe 7. Using onion skin, you will draw the contact foot in roughly the center of the 2 feet of the first contact position. The pose looks like a flamingo, with the back leg bent and only the front leg foot in contact with the ground. Note the head height is higher than the contact position. You can test the cycle and see if it works. It will need more key poses to give the action the feeling of weight. The downward key on keyframe 4 is in a recoil pose. It anticipates the movement upward to the passing position. The front foot is positioned slightly behind the same foot of the first contact key. Generally, the toe of the front leg in the downward key should slide directly behind the heel of the front leg of the first contact key. Finally, add the upward key on keyframe 10. The position of the front foot in contact with the ground is positioned behind the contact foot of the passing position. The contact leg of the passing position straightens, lifting the center of gravity to its highest point as the back leg moves forward in an arc-shaped path of action. And this leads to the next step at keyframe 13, which should already be drawn. Keyframes allow you to stay within a time limit for a shot in an animated sequence. They should be used as projection poses, so don't be afraid to adjust your key poses if the movement is improved by finishing slightly off the position you are aiming for. Use onion skin and the selection tool to make those adjustments. When you have successfully animated the first step, you can animate the next step to complete the cycle. This is essentially the same key poses as the first step, except the legs will swap position. The front leg forward in the first step is now behind the back leg in the next step. The poses will occupy keyframe 16 for the downward pose, 19 for the passing position, and 22 for the upward pose. Check the legs follow through in the right position. A common error is switching the legs, which is why we shade in the back leg. Expose 2 frames to frame 24. You don't need to redraw the first contact position again, as loop playback will take it back to the start on keyframe 1. Let's add the arms. They'll move in an opposite direction to the legs, with the widest point in the downward key, the recoil position, and come to rest on either side of the body in the passing position. Feel free to pause here while you work out the position of the arms. A tip is to draw the hands in as a rough shape and not worry about details like drawing in every finger. This is when live drawing comes in very handy. On quick poses, you learn to take an impressionistic drawing approach. I suggest that you make a new drawing layer for the arms and head. So we've built a walk cycle on the spot with just 7 key poses. Let's have a tea break and continue part 2, where I'll show you how to clean up using Harmony's dynamic drawing tools and add in in-betweens for fluid movement and to create the all-important timing for animation. In part 2, let's continue animating our walk cycle. Once you're happy with the basic movement created in part 1, you can clean up using the Shift and Trace tool, Pencil tool, and Contour Editor. This will eliminate any inconsistencies with volume control and keep your character design on model. I'd recommend that you do this first before adding in-betweens, so that you don't replicate inconsistencies when in-betweening, although you might need another cleanup once in-betweens are added. To use the Shift and Trace tool, enable onion skin, add the egg sheet panel, and choose the drawing view here. Select the first frame, and right or control click. Select Send Drawings to Desk. You'll see the Shift and Trace tool panel open up on the left of the drawing view panel. On the egg sheet, this time hold Option and click the next drawing to send it to the desk. You have 2 drawings in Shift and Trace. Enable both and select the manipulator here. Using the manipulators, you can now move your drawings on top of each other to check volume control. Amazing. This will not affect what you see in the camera view. All your drawing positions will remain in the same position. Use the Pencil tool and Contour Editor for any cleanup. You can reset the position here to start again. Once you've finished cleanup with this set of drawings, you can remove them and send another set of drawings to the desk and repeat the process. When all drawings are removed from the desk, the Shift and Trace tool will close. Timing charts are often seen on the edge of an animator's drawing to indicate the spacings for in-betweens. Main drawings are called extremes or keyframes, and the drawings in between are called in-betweens. This timing chart shows the spacing between drawings. We'll put in 3 in-betweens between the 2 extremes, 1 and 5. Number 3 is exactly in the middle, and usually an approximation is made by halving and rehalving. If you want the walk to ease in and out of the extremes, you will need a couple more in-betweens. Your chart might look like this. We halve, rehalve, and halve again to indicate that the in-betweens are closer to the extreme on the first keyframe to make the action slower, easing in at the start and accelerate to about midway before easing out or decelerating at the end, where the in-betweens are closer together. Let's put in the in-betweens. A walk on 12s is generally the timing for a normal walk, but it's hard to divide up. It works out at 2 in-betweens between each key pose, but that's a lot of work and much easier to in-between a walk on 16s. It's easier to divide up and is 2/3 of a step per second. If you animate on 2s, you only have to put in 1 in-between. Of course, you can animate on 1s and put in 3 in-betweens if you have time. When I in-between a walk cycle, I might favour certain poses like the downward and passing position by drawing the previous or next frame closer to make the character feel heavier or lighter. This creates a more natural looking movement using easing. You can specify this in the timing chart by drawing the marker closer to the previous or next pose on the chart rather than halfway in between. Drawing in-betweens can be a labour of love, and one that takes time to get a good outcome. In industry and any teamwork, in-betweening is a specific role in the drawn animation workflow. It is usually done by animators that follow keyframes created by an animation director for certain shots and actions. You will most likely be working on a drawing style that isn't your own and expected to follow timing charts to understand how to place the in-betweens. This is all great practice and will ultimately improve your animation skills. Once you've got a walk cycle on the spot, you can complete the looping cycle by adding a panning background. Here's my example of Mr. Orange taking a kind of psychogeographic walk through an Arizona-inspired landscape. I'd recommend that you create assets for the foreground, midground, and background to give the illusion of depth and that beautiful parallax effect. The parallax effect is observed when viewing objects while moving. For example, when travelling in a car, objects closer to you seem to pass far more quickly, while objects in the distance appear to move slower. Depending on the required duration of your pan, create a composition that is at least 2 or 3 times the screen width. Use maintain size to arrange the objects in Z depth for that parallax effect. Pop a camera in and add a peg. Use the translate tool to move the camera from left to right. The aim is to pan your composition so that it moves in the opposite direction to the walk cycle. Super easy with a dynamic camera move to complete your beautiful walk cycle scene. And that's it for how to build a walk cycle, starting with 5 key poses all the way to in-betweening with a bonus of panning a background. Check out my tutorial on creating a multiplane scene and camera for more tips. Thanks for watching. See you next time.